So we're going to create a wood slice or wood circle ornament. First thing you're going to need to do is take your flower and make sure the back of it isn't sticking out too far. This one isn't too bad, but if it is, you're going to take your scissors, ideally, or you could use aviation snips like me, and trim the back. Just make sure you don't trim so close that you trim the string off and the flower unravels. Then you're going to add a generous amount of hot glue because you really want this to stick down, and pop it right where you want on your wood slice or circle. If you have a hole like this one for your ornament string, just make sure that you don't cover it up and leave a little space for it. Give it maybe 20 or 30 seconds for the flower to adhere with the glue to the wood. And then we're going to add a string right there to that hole. It's a lot easier in the beginning than it is later when you add everything else. So you're going to fold your string in half and thread the loose ends right through the circle. Once you do that, pull the loose ends through the loop. I didn't do a good job of recording this so that you could see that, but you'll see it after. And pull it nice and tight so that it creates a little secured area at the bottom. Then up towards the top, you're just going to make a knot. And once you make that knot, pull it nice and tight, and you can trim off any of the loose ends on your string. So once you've got that done, then it's time for you to start decorating around your ornament. So with the bits of greenery that you have, it may be the same pieces or it may be different depending on which kit you get. You're going to really look at these as pieces that can be broken apart. So I like to almost break these right in half and trim off that little nub on the bottom where it was attached to a larger piece of greenery. And I don't want to glue anything right away. I'm going to find the areas. This one I'm having a little bit of trouble squeezing in, and it really is because there is greenery coming around on all sides, just little sprigs. So this one will slide in nice and easy, and I like that curl going up. On this other one, what I realized is I needed to just pull off a little tiny piece of the greenery on the back side so that it would lay a little bit flatter. I even pulled off a couple on the side too, because I just think you wouldn't see them there, and broke off even a few more pieces. So once I did that, I was able to pull that on the side, and I've really created 3 pieces out of that one little tiny piece of greenery. And I'm going to come and do the same thing on the other side with the similar piece of greenery. So I'm going to break this into 3 pieces and adjust them as needed by pulling off little sprigs here and there. And I'm going for kind of a diagonal. So these are going to go on the opposite sides. I'm still leaving some space where that string is in case I ever need to replace it. And I'm still just placing, not gluing anything just yet. You could use scissors for this, but I prefer just to rip the greenery apart myself. It's a good chance just to kind of get out some aggression. And once you've got your pieces, then you just, again, gently place them in and see where you'd like them before you commit by gluing. In this case, I felt like that other piece fit better there, so I switched the other one up to the top. Just kind of play around and get a sense of it. When you're like, okay, I like this, gently slide the pieces out. And you can do what I did here, which is add kind of a generous line of hot glue right underneath the edge of those flower petals and slide the greenery on. You can also just glue the end and a little bit on the back side of each piece of greenery where it's going to hit the wood and slide those in as well. If you have a hot temp hot glue gun, the original way I showed would work best. If yours is low temp, it may cool too quickly for that. So I'm just going to repeat that on the other side. Big line of hot glue, not too thin either. Slide those pieces of greenery in. Notice I'm lifting up the petals because I don't want to get the glue all over those petals and then have it so that they stick to the bottom instead of the greenery. Already super cute, and we could really leave it just like that, but we're going to add more. And you're welcome to either use all of the pieces in your kit or not, depending on what you want to do. So I've got some little sprigs of greenery here, and you're going to watch how I just break these apart as well. And you could use scissors, or you can just give it a nice gentle tug and break the pieces apart. Play around with placing these in between the other sprigs. Maybe you want to go in the spots on the circle that are not filled. I like to leave some of the wood showing a little bit, just to add that little rustic element. But you could completely cover your wood slice almost like a wreath with your flower in the center as well. When I figure out where I like these, then I can add a little tiny bit of glue on the end. What you'll see is I kind of do a little spiral with my glue gun. So especially if it's cold in your room, in winter it often is, your glue gun will just have lots of glue strings. And so if you have a lot of glue strings on your ornament, in the end, take a hair dryer and hit it, and it will sort of melt away those hot glue strings. And you can also just pick them away as well. So I'm really just using this greenery as an accent. I'm not going crazy with it. I don't necessarily want to add too much. I didn't even use that full sprig. Now I've got this little bit of a like softer green, and I'm really breaking this piece down, if you'll notice, into just really little pieces, and I'm just pulling them off that stem they are attached to, and they are just tiny, tiny little accent pieces. You could keep yours bigger, but I really wanted these just to be a small little element, not something that stood out too much. And I'm using them to fill in any gaps or evenly just add a little bit of that color throughout. Still, for my preference, keeping some of that wood showing, but you could again go all the way around your flower. When you're adding such a tiny amount of hot glue to something like this, it does cool really quickly, so you have to work fast. If your hot glue cools and you put it in, it doesn't stick, you can actually just pull the hot glue right off once it's cooled down and try again. We're going to add one more piece on here, and then we're going to give it a good look, and we're going to see about maybe adding a few other little elements in for some pops of color. So already looking nice. Clear my mess away just a little bit, and I found one more of those little pieces of green I want to add in. That was one of those little strands I pulled off the initial piece of greenery, the cypress, and it is one teeny tiny little stem of it, and just adding it in for a little bit more dimension. So there's pine cones and there's berries. I'm going to go with the berries first and kind of figure out, oh, maybe pine cones first. So the pine cones could go underneath the flower. They could get nestled in the greenery, maybe even right on those pieces of ruscus right in between that triad of leaves. This particular pine cone, a little big. Because this pine cone is a little big, but I want it right there in that spot, I'm going to see if I can cheat and cut the pine cone down. It doesn't break easily, a little stronger than I thought. So I'm going to use my snips to cut it. You could use your wire cutters, you could use your scissors. You could just not care that your pine cone's a little big and glue it on anyway. I didn't wind up getting a lot off my pine cone, but just enough that I could make it fit in there, and it didn't feel quite so bulky. So testing it out first before I glue, always, because really once you glue to the flower, you're not going to come back from that. If you pull the hot glue away on the flower, it's going to rip the flower. If you do happen to rip your flower or tear it at any point, any paint that is a similar color can go right over those petals and it will hide the inner white pith. So just getting an idea of where I want to put these pine cones. And once I do, a good bit of glue on the bottom and the back side, or the part that will touch either the greenery or the wood, wherever you're going to want it to go. Now, I'm going to recommend that you hold these down until that glue cools, especially if it's in a spot where it might not stay perfectly. And then we're going to go and add our berries. So I'm going to do the berries right next to the pine cones. And I do want to cover a little bit of what you can see of where the flower connects to the wood slice. So I'm really going to sneak my berry down in there. Just that little pop of red with the pink is really pretty and festive. Kind of reminds me of candy. You may need to snip the wires on your berries. You could in fact cut them all the way off if you wanted to, but sometimes it's nice to have that little bit of wire to push into everything else and really hold on with the glue. Once you've done that, you're just going to give everything a good check and look it over. See if you want to add anything else. If it all looks good, cool. If you want to add a little bit to cover mechanics, use some of those little pieces that you may have broken off. One fun thing about these ornaments is that they look great on a tree. You can absolutely put a magnet on the back instead of a string and make it a magnet on your fridge. And you could even hang these in your car as an air freshener and just add a little bit of essential oil. Have fun creating. I can't wait to see what they look like.